All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're going to cover IV fluids. We'll discuss hypotonic, isotonic, and hypertonic fluids. We'll cover a couple of key mechanisms to start. That we can just kind of understand how these fluids work a little bit better. And then we'll give some examples of each fluid. We'll talk about some clinical indications as well as some situations and some side effects to monitor and look out for with each type of fluid. Before we get started, first, if you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel. That helps me a lot, and that is the best way to help the channel grow. Secondly, I do have my website up. It's cloud9crna.com. If you are a nurse that's just getting into the ICU, or you're a new grad nurse getting into the ICU, check that out for some great resources there. As well as if you are a experienced ICU nurse who is applying to CRNA school or wants to become a CRNA, especially if you have an upcoming CRNA school interview, check that website out there as well. I have some good resources for you to look at. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it here. So there's three key concepts we're going to discuss right here in yellow before we get to the actual fluids, just so you can understand a little bit more of how these fluids work. Hopefully this will make it a little more simple. So first thing we're talking about is osmolarity. Now, osmolarity, this is defined as this is the total concentration of dissolved particles in a solution. So total, that's the symbol for concentration of dissolved particles in a solution. So a little more beginner-friendly way to think about it is basically you can think of how crowded that fluid is with solutes. There's an example, or excuse me, there's an equation for osmolarity. It's 2 times the concentration of sodium plus your glucose divided by 18 plus your BUN over 2.8. So obviously you can tell from the equation that sodium, glucose, and BUN all play a role. But for the purpose of this video, and especially if you're initially trying to understand this concept, sodium is the primary driver of osmolarity. So when you hear osmolarity, for the purpose of the video, just focus on sodium. That'll make it a lot more simple, and that's really the best way to understand this, especially initially. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be intracellular versus extracellular space. So the intracellular space, this is just simply, obviously, what is inside the cell. And then the extracellular space, so this can be broken into interstitial space and the intravascular space. So once again, for this concept, because we're giving IV fluids, we're directly affecting the intravascular space. Don't worry about the interstitial space right now. When you hear of extracellular, just think of intravascular space. So obviously, what is inside the blood vessel. So when the intracellular or extracellular, where this becomes important, is actually this next concept of osmosis, and it's just creating these gradients for water to move and sodium, and that's kind of a big major concept. So we just need to make sure you understand there's basically 2 main spaces: what's inside the cell and what's in the blood. So that'll definitely be very, very beneficial to help you understand this moving forward. Okay, the last one is osmosis. So really there's 2 ways you can try to define osmosis. What's simplest for me, simplest way for me is to think of it, this is just the movement of water from an area of low solute. We just put sodium basically. So you can just put low solute concentration, which is, for obviously here we just said is sodium, but low solute concentration to high solute concentration. Once again, for purpose of this video, when you're thinking about the osmolarity, solute, think sodium. So basically water's moving from an area of low sodium concentration, to high sodium concentration. So an easy way to kind of think of this, or a little saying, is basically water follows salt, right? So water follows salt, your salt is your sodium. So some kind of beginner friendly, some easy tips there to how to help you kind of understand these concepts. All three of these will be key to understanding how these fluids actually work. Okay, so now let's move on to the actual fluids. So in red here, this is important. Have that the plasma osmolarity is typically between 280 and 290 milliosmoles per liter. This is important because when you're talking about these tonicities here, like hypotonic, isotonic, hypertonic, those are all relative to the osmolarity of plasma, right? So hypotonic, we know hypo basically means what? Low. So we know this is going to be lower than the plasma osmolarity of 280 to 290. So these fluids, now this can be give or take a little bit, but they're generally between 250 and 260 milliosmoles per liter. So some examples of these fluids would be like your half NS, so your 0.45 NS. This one is about 154 milliosmoles per liter. As well, another one would be D5W, which is 253 milliosmoles per liter. So obviously this one is right in that space, and this one is quite hypotonic. Like I said, these can give or take a little, especially when we'll talk about some isotonic fluids like LR and albumin, where technically not right in that range, but there's got to be a little bit of a significant gradient for the fluid to actually work, right? So that's just a general range there, but we definitely know hypotonic, its tonicity is lower than plasma. So the osmolarity is lower than plasma, right? So it's below this 280 to 290. Okay, so now with hypotonic fluids, how these work, basically we'll draw a cell and let's draw a blood vessel. Draw some sodium here, within the blood vessel as well. Okay, so when you're giving a hypotonic fluid, you're giving a fluid that has a lower osmolarity than what's already present in the plasma, right? So we're giving something, let's say we're giving D5W 253. If this, we know that this value inside the blood vessel here is already about 280 to 290, right? So how these hypotonic fluids work is what they basically do. If we can remember water follows salt. So water is going to move from an area of low solute to high solute concentration. So right now, you can see there's more sodium. Sodium concentration is much higher in the blood vessel than in the cell. But basically, by giving hypotonic fluids, what you're doing is you're basically giving free water inside the blood vessel. So what happens is you end up actually diluting this sodium value, where you'll get to a point where the osmolarity of the blood vessel is less than what's in the cell, and then that water or fluid will actually, so we said, remember, low to high, it'll get to a point this is so diluted where this value, this osmolarity or solute concentration will be less than what's inside the cell, so water will move into the cell. So that's a key concept here. So the big thing with hypotonic fluids, this fluid is going to move inside the cell. So this is from the intravascular space, so the blood vessel, right, to intracellular. Okay, so now knowing that, some clinical indications of when this might be used, this would be for things like hypernatremia, which is kind of the example I just draw. Basically, by giving free water, you're going to dilute it. You're trying to create that gradient, basically to drive. We'll end up diluting it so much where the fluid will end up moving intracellular, right? As well as cellular dehydration would be another example. As far as big things to monitor for, or some risks, I should say, with it. The biggest one here is, by moving that fluid inside the cell. You get cellular swelling. These cells can even burst at some point. But basically, increased ICP. So people with some kind of traumatic brain injury or anything where you want to avoid, potential swelling of the brain, that think of hypotonic fluids, think of fluids moving into the cells inside the brain, causing brain swelling. So that's a big thing to monitor for. It's likely tested on very frequently. Is increased ICP. We'll just put inside increased cellular swelling. Okay, so now that we go hypotonic, let's go to isotonic. So here, these fluids, like we said, iso, right? So we know plasma is about 280 to 290, and we said the tonicity here is dependent on the plasma osmolarity, right? So if we know that plasma is 280 to 290, we know that these typically have a range, we'll say from 280 to about 300 milliosmoles per liter. And like I said, once again, remember this is give or take a little bit, right? So some examples of this would be your sodium chloride, say normal saline. This one is a little bit higher. This would be 308. Once again, excuse me, it's not a large enough difference where it's actually 308 close enough to 300. So that's isotonic. Plasmalyte is another example. This one's about 294. LR would be an example here. This one's actually slightly hypotonic. It's about 273. But once again, it's not big enough. It still acts isotonic just because that difference isn't big enough to actually make the fluid act hypotonic, right? Albumin could be another one. This one's normally around 300. So those are just some examples there. Isotonic fluids. Okay, now how isotonic fluids work is these do not create a gradient. So there's no major fluid shift either into or out of the cells, right? So no major fluid shift into or out of the cell. So basically, these fluids just stay in the intravascular space. Excuse me. Okay, so by giving fluid, we're not creating a big gradient. We're not changing the osmolarity, tonicity a whole lot, right? So we know that we're just basically increasing the intravascular volume. So some things to monitor for, we'll start with some times we normally use it, would just be basically volume, resuscitation. This could be used for hypovolemia. So once again, we're basically just you're just putting more fluid in the vascular space, right? Shock could be used as well. Now, the major risk, this one, once again, you basically by just adding more fluid, you would think of things like fluid overload. Be an obvious one there. And then additionally, this one, if you're just starting out, don't worry about why this happens. But another thing, especially if you're using with normal saline, would be this can actually cause hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. Don't worry about that one too much if you're just kind of beginning and just really trying to understand the fluid shifts. Don't worry about that at all, actually. But just know with isotonic fluids, you're not creating, you're not changing that sodium, that gradient a whole lot, right? For water to move from low to high, that osmolarity is going to stay relatively consistent. So basically what you're doing is you're just adding fluid into the intravascular space. So that's why it's good to use for volume resuscitation and hypovolemia and things of that nature, okay? All right, last one. Let's move on here to hypertonic. So with these fluids, once again, hypertonic. So we know this is going to be more than 280 to 290, right? So these typically would just say about greater than 300 milliosmoles per liter would typically be isotonic. Now, obviously, you can look at the NS, right, and the isotonic and say, oh, that's 308. But, you know, like we said, it's typically got to be a pretty significant difference in order for these fluids to actually, you know, behave either hypotonic or hypertonic, right? So some examples. Biggest one, the most common one, is going to be 3% saline. So that would be your most common example there. So now we think about how this works, just opposite of the hypotonic, right? So now you've got a cell, some sodium in it, you've got a blood vessel, which indicated for a patient with hyponatremia, right? So basically now what you want to do is you're trying to basically create this gradient where you're trying to get more, you know, the sodium. You want to raise the sodium level, inside the blood vessel, right? So by giving a hypertonic fluid, you're going to basically add more sodium to the blood vessel, or eventually the value inside the blood vessel have a higher concentration than what's inside the cell. And what we just talked about here, remember, water follows salt, or low solute to high solute. If there's more, get to a point where there's more salt in the blood vessel, fluid would follow from the cell into the blood vessel, right? So that's the big thing here with hypertonics. Now, fluid moves into the intravascular space. That is from the intracellular space. Okay? This one, pretty much the main indication for this one would be severe hyponatremia. Would be where you mainly see that one used clinically. Also, maybe if somebody has increased ICP, remember we said that hypotonic can cause it, but if they have it, this can reverse it, right? So you can help lower the intracranial pressure by pulling that fluid out of the cell into the vascular space, right? Major risk here. This one, the big one, the one's commonly tested on, would be, you get some neuro effects here, but the main one would be these called osmotic demyelination syndrome. That's if it's corrected too fast. So a big thing here with this one is you're using this, you're going to always, if for severe hyponatremia, you want to correct this slowly. Sorry, I messed up on that S there. You don't want to overcorrect. My goodness. Hyponatremia too fast. And another one, obviously, for pulling fluid into the intravascular space, once again, a risk for fluid overload. So that's just a rundown there of the hypotonic, isotonic, and hypertonic fluids. Hopefully this breakdown gave you a better understanding of this concept. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. And once again, if you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate y'all watching.